Hey there, I'm Dylan McFadden, and welcome to the very first episode of Dropping the Hammer for the year 2022. Uh, on this episode, it's a very long episode, almost 90 minutes, and then it's entirely an interview with Colleague Racing's AJ Allmendinger. Uh, this interview I conducted with AJ back in September on the day of the Xfinity Series Bristol Night Race, which he would go on to win just a few hours after this interview. I conducted this interview as uh, as part of a profile I did on him for the December issue of Speed Sport magazine. Um, but there was so much that we talked about, I couldn't fit it into the story, which was published again in December. So you should go check that out if you're a subscriber to Speed Sport magazine, or if you just need something new to subscribe to. So over the course of, again, almost an hour and a half, AJ and I talked about his upbringing in San Jose, how he got into open wheel racing, his jump from ChampCar to NASCAR, and some of the misconceptions about that from people within the ChampCar IndyCar community. We talked about how he wound up at Team Penske, his unfortunate departure from Team Penske in 2012 after he was suspended for a positive drug test, and how he bounced back from that, and how now he's enjoying probably the most fun time of his motorsports career right now with Colleague Racing after he made the championship 4 last year. But we talk about a lot, and he gets honest, and it's a really 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 good interview in my opinion. But so without further ado, here's 90 good minutes with Colleague Racing's AJ Allmendinger.
Watching watching NCIS right now.
Oh boy. Is that usual pre-race entertainment for you, NCIS?
No, but I've kind of got locked into it this morning. I don't know why, because I'm just trying to kill time. But yeah, it's like, oh, you watch the first episode, then you see the next one, and then
all of a sudden you've
four,
lost an afternoon.
4 hours go by, and it is what it is.
So like typically, like what would you be doing, at this point before a race? What's your race day routine?
Well, normally, like on a day like that, with this schedule now, when you fly in, I'd
Yeah.
usually land and go grab some food, and then be bored and get to the racetrack. And if it was Saturday, I'd be watching college football probably. But
Okay.
it's I keep forgetting it's Friday, so there's really nothing on right now, and that's how you get to NCIS. But
Who's your college team? Who would you be watching on a Saturday?
I'm married into a Nebraska family, so
Oh, that's out there.
yeah. So my wife is a Cornhusker, and I didn't go. I went to a junior college for a couple of semesters, really, one semester for public speaking and marketing. So
Really?
yeah, that when I graduated high school, I was kind of the car racing side of it was starting to happen. So I basically took 2 courses for one semester of the things that I thought I needed, and that was my extent of college. So never had a college team,
Okay.
and married into a Cornhusker family. So
Okay. All
yeah,
right. I guess we can start like tonight. As correct me if I'm wrong. You're leading a NASCAR points series for the first time in your career, correct?
for sure. First time, I think I had come close twice, maybe. I want to say 2018 was it, maybe, or 2017 maybe. I did well in the first few stages of the Daytona 500, and we finished third. So I
Okay.
think it was that year I was like 3 points out of the points lead after one race. And then I want to say it was 2011 possibly when I was at Petty. I think I finished ninth and 11th the first 2 races, or 11th and ninth, and I was third in points.
Oh
So that's
wow.
just the state of points lead in the NASCAR series is come.
So when you realized that was the case after 3 races ago, what was that like moment for you when like, oh wow, I'm leading the points of a NASCAR series?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was one of those things. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I mean, that's what you work towards. And The beginning of this year, I felt like we had an opportunity to be really competitive since just the races that I had done the last 2 years and the speed that we had. But with that said, College Racing is still a fairly new team, right? It's 6 years into existence. Ross and Justin did a fantastic job last year. So the way the year started, we finished 5th at Daytona, but then we got wrecked out at the road course at Daytona.
Yeah.
Homestead, we were running really well and got spun out on the final restart and didn't have a great finish. And so, with that said, we kind of were about 80 points behind Austin Cindric. Really, I felt like from race 5 on, and we've just bounced back and forth in that points gap for a whole season. And all of a sudden, a couple of bad races for him, and we're leading the points. And it was one of those things where the last 2 weeks, it's good and bad, right? We still have a 5-point lead, but I felt like, hell, I mean, we could have maybe clinched this thing because we were really good at Darlington and had a loose wheel on the final pit stop, and we lost about 20 points there. And then Richmond last week, we were battling for the lead, and the strategy, the way it played out, we went from probably not finishing any worse than second to finishing 18th. So we've given up some points, but I'm sure Austin Cindric could say that about the previous 2 weeks. So it's the way racing is. But overall, man, it's cool to be in this position. And, at the end of it, we still know the championship is the ultimate goal. But to have a shot at the regular season championship is pretty awesome, because at the end of the day, that's more about consistency than the overall championship, where, of course, we got to get to Phoenix, but it comes down to one race at that point.
If I had told you, like, you've until I started researching your career for this, I wasn't really all that familiar with your career from the time where you left ChampCar and enter NASCAR. Like, before you were at Team Penske, I really wasn't up to snuff on what that was like for you. So if I had told you back in like 06, 07, when you're first, dipping your finger into the NASCAR waters, you'll get a shot like at a NASCAR championship, but it's going to be a while. It's going to be a cup, basically a decade and a half from now, 2021. If I had told you then you'd get your shot, but it'd be a while, what would you have said?
06, I would have said, no, I don't know about that. You might be a little crazy on that. If you would have asked me by the end of 07, I would have said, yeah, I might get that now. Because, I mean, really, it's been so long ago, but at the time, I thought people thought I left because, there's more money in NASCAR, et cetera. Like, I loved ChampCar. Like, I enjoyed it so much. I loved driving those race cars every day. I loved the venues that we went to, things like that. But at that point, the two series were split. Yeah. There was IRL and there was ChampCar. ChampCar was dying. We all saw the writing on the wall. And really, for a couple of reasons, I had to make the decision. Was the team that I was driving for at that point, Forsyth. Yeah. Jerry Forsyth hated Tony George. He hated the IRL. He made it very clear he wasn't going to IRL or whatever the merger, because the merger was going to be more IRL based, right? It was going to be Tony George and however that happened. And so he wasn't going to do it. And I'm sure I could have found another ride because I had a lot of momentum on the open wheel side of it. But at that point too, I didn't know what the Indy car schedule was going to look like when they merged, because at that point IRL was, I would say, predominantly oval based. I didn't want to race Indy cars on ovals. As weird as that sound, I went to a series that raced mostly on ovals. Indy cars on ovals, like, they scared me at times. Like, really? If you IRL races, like Chicago and Charlotte, and there was a lot of them where there was just Texas for sure, like a lot of bad wrecks where guys were getting into the chain link fence and things like that. I just didn't want to do that. Going to Indy is the prestige and history of Indy, like, you're willing to make those chances, and that's what it's all about. But I just didn't want to do that. I had an association with Red Bull. I didn't want to go straight to Cup. Like, when they were like, yeah, we're going to go Cup racing, I was like, I don't think that's a great idea. Like, I should probably run some Busch races and some trucks. Yeah. And it just didn't happen like that. We didn't run a lot of that, and I just floundered and hung on for a couple years. My season in 09 with Petty, we were only supposed to do 5 or 6 races, and I finished third in the 500, and we had a decent start to the year. So I literally gave back every cent that I made from those races through the first 3 quarters of the year, because that was the only way to help keep the car going.
Wow.
And like anytime I was getting prize money, and especially back then, the prize money wasn't bad. And I'm like, if I give it back, can I keep racing? Like, so I did that for a few years. So it was survival of the fittest really for a long time. So, and then really at the end of 18, if you'd have said, 3 years later, like, you're going to be contending for an Xfinity championship, leading the points in a NASCAR series, I said, probably not, because I don't know if I'm going to be full-time ever again. So it's been crazy, but I mean, I've been very fortunate. So I love what I'm doing right now. I love being a part of College racing. And I'm just so thankful every day that I get to work with Matt College, Chris Rice, all the men and women at College racing, because it's just, I didn't expect it, and I enjoy it more than I ever expected as well.
So like, this is probably a dumb question at this point, but do you consider this right now the peak of your racing career?
The NASCAR side of it, for sure. In 06 in ChampCar, when I joined Forsyth Racing, we won 5 out of 9 races. We could have easily won, I think, like 7 out of 9 that year. And it just, it was like, at that point I felt like, man, I walked in the racetrack and I had all the confidence in the world, and that was a great feeling. But for sure, on the NASCAR side of it, I feel way better than I have ever been in a race car. I kind of have an understanding of what I want. It helps when you're able to run up front every week, and you can kind of work on your weaknesses and your strengths all at the same time. Because when you run a cup and when you're especially at the smaller team and you're battling for top 15s, it's a grind, and you're doing whatever you have to do just to try to get the best finish possible. So yeah, I feel like by far I'm the best that I've ever been on the NASCAR side of it, but I also feel like there's a lot more room for me to grow and to keep getting better.
Well, like when you say that, so what's it like to be like, you're 39, like you're deep into your career. What's it like for you to still be learning about racing at this point?
Well, I feel really, really lucky and fortunate, because I get these opportunities still. Mm-hmm. And, at the end of 18, I did the deal with NBC, and I kind of thought, okay, this is the next step in my life, I guess. And we'll see kind of where it goes. And Chris Rice, I'd never met Chris Rice, never even spoke to him. And he called me, said, hey, you want to run some road course races and maybe the super speedway races? They had to talk me into the super speedway races. Those are definitely not my favorite. So they really had to work on me to do those. But
you're good at them. You are good at them.
Like, that's the funny. Matt Colligan and I last night were just talking about this. He's like, you're so good at them. I'm like, I hate them though. I literally hate them. Like, there's not like it's one of those things. Like, I don't like that type of racing, but somebody's got to win those races. So I want to give myself a chance to win them. But yeah, it's one of those things that I just like I love going out there and driving these race cars for Colleague, because I do. It's like, I want to make us better, but like, because of that, they make me so much better. And Chris and I are always talking, and he's just, we're constantly trying to be better together. So, but yeah, this is honestly for me in Colleague racing, this is new territory, right? Like, trying to go for a championship. Last week, for instance, I was so frustrated after the race because I felt like we had a shot to win, and strategy and things didn't work out again. And I was mad, and I voiced my frustrations, and Chris voiced his frustrations about it. And we talked after, and it's like, it's like we kind of laughed. It's like, yeah, we're all kind of new to this when it comes to actually battling for a championship.
Okay. All right. So let's back up a bit. You were born in Los Gatos, California, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, my mom always says, because everything says Los Gatos, and she says, yes, you were born in Los Gatos, and we drove you home back to San Jose. So San Jose is where I grew up, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So San Jose, what is it like to grow up in San Jose, California? Like, what area of the city did you grow up in, and like, what did your parents do? Like, what was the childhood of AJ Allmendinger?
It was racing. It was all racing all the time. So my dad was a a carpet layer his whole life. My mom she did a lot of different jobs, whether it came to communication or she was a medical assistant for a long time. But we didn't have I don't have, like, we weren't, my parents weren't rich by any means. So they mortgaged their house 3 times to keep me going in racing.
Okay. Wow.
But I would have never known. Like, we also weren't, we weren't, trying to, I guess, put it the right way. Like, I never was starving. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but all the money went into racing. My dad was a local dirt track racer.
Oh, okay.
Before I was born, and then when I was a young kid, like, we were always at my dad's races. I was watching him race, and then when I was 5 years old, it was time for me to start racing. I wanted to race. I started off in BMX bicycles. I wanted to be actually a motocross rider. I love supercross, motocross. Still my favorite form of racing today. Love watching it.
You've actually done analysis stuff.
So okay. That was the funny thing when I went to NBC. We were doing the weekday shows, and we were doing like the motorsports hour, and I was like, and first they were like, well, motorcycles, I was like, I got that. Don't you worry. Like, nobody else has to even worry about it. And that was one of the coolest things I got to do for NBC was I went and called a supercross race at Meadowlands with Ricky Carmichael and Ralph Shaheen. Like, I thought that was the coolest thing I did out of all of it. So, but yeah, it was racing all the time.
So starting at 5 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I went bicycle racing for 3 years. When I was about 8, I was like, okay, it's time to get on a motorcycle. I'm ready to go motocross racing. My mom was like, hell no, that's not happening. You're crazy. So we're going to put you in quarter midgets and then go-karting, and then kind of up through the open wheel ranks is kind of where I went.
Wow. So like was your parents like, was your dad actively pushing you to do racing, or was this like, Dad, I want to do this, let's do it?
No, it was, Dad, I want to do this. It's just all I knew. I watched my dad race. My mom, I'm an only child, so it was just me, mom, and mom and dad all the time at a race, and that's all I ever knew.
Wow. Well, like what so you're doing this stuff like bikes and go-karts and stuff. Like, what are your hobbies? What are your non-racing hobbies at this point as a kid?
So the only thing I love sports. I love watching football and basketball and all of it. I never was able to play any sports just for the mere fact because we're racing every weekend. So what I did as a hobby, I love golf now. I wish I would have done that as a kid, quite honestly, but I didn't. So my background of hobbies was bowling.
Oh,
I loved. So my mom and I would always go bowling for fun, and then I took lessons. I started getting pretty good at it. So I just played in junior leagues after school and all that, because it was the only thing that I could do after school that didn't involve weekends, right? Because weekends we were racing. So I was in a lot of bowling leagues as a kid.
Did you win anything?
I was okay. My highest was like I think I got up to like a 194 average. My highest game was like 267.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all right.
Okay. So
it was not that I took overly serious because I was racing, but it was just something fun to do after school. My mom could drop me off at the bowling lanes after school, and I could sit there for 3 hours and bowl.
Okay. All right. So at what point in all this did your pursuit of racing really turn serious? Like, we're building possibly towards something.
Yeah, karting was always going pretty good. But because of my parents not having a lot of money, like going car racing we were never going to be able to do it like ourselves in that sense of my parents able to afford it. So my big break really became when I was driving karting. Paul Tracy had a go-kart team he had started, and he asked me to drive for it after like their first year. And I got my name started getting recognition just outside of karting, in the fact that I was associated with Paul Tracy. Anytime he could talk about his karting team or his drivers, I was kind of at the forefront of that. and I got to skip. I want a scholarship through karting for the Skip Barber series, and that kind of
Okay.
kicked it off. And then a little bit of talent, I'd say, and some luck in the fact that I was able to go win races in those series, and I somehow just found the next step because my parents never. It was not. I had to go. My parents helped me, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
We couldn't fund it, so it was always like I had to meet the right person, or I had to be at the right place at the right time and get the job done. And I was very fortunate that I always kind of found the next step somehow, and never really sat on the sidelines. I was always racing something every year, and it just kind of kept progressing.
So when you're with Paul Tracy's team, how old are you at that point?
17.
Wow. So
And right 16, right at the end of 16, early 17 was kind of, I think, when the age that I was when I started with them.
so you're 16, 17-year-old racing for a driver who's raced for Roger Penske in
Yeah,
IndyCar. What did that? How much did that association mean to you at that point?
all of it, because really I would get to hang out with Paul. At the time he lived in Las Vegas, and there were so many times where, especially after the season, when he was done, like I'd be hanging out with him, Jimmy Vasser, Carpentier, Alex Tagliani,
As
guys like that.
as a, as
Dario
a,
Frank.
as a
Yeah,
16, 17-year-old. Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And um, you know, there's one time I remember Tag had at Fontana had backed it in the fence their last race of the season, running like 230, hit the fence. And we were at the biggest race for us was the Super Nationals in Las Vegas. And it was always the week or two after their final season or their final race in Fontana. And stuff like Tag come up to me and be like, "Brother, you ever piss blood?" And I'm like, 17. I'm like, no, Tag, I haven't. He goes, "Just think about your career." He's like, "I've been pissing blood for a week and a half since that wreck. It hurts." I'm like, oh my God. I was like, but just so like stuff like that. I was like, wow, that's what I really want to do. Like, is this, but yeah. So I got to spend a few years, like seeing
Wow.
all of it really.
So I'm always curious about like when drivers, if there's like certain like forks in the road where they go to open wheel or they go down a path towards what will eventually be stock cars. And so was it only open wheel for you for at this point in your career that's the only thing in your mind about possibly doing?
No, not really. I mean, at that point, I just knew I just wanted to race cars,
Yeah.
and I loved all form of car racing. But yeah, when I was karting, it was kind of like early on when I started karting, I was like, I just want to race whatever. Like I want to race. Like I loved watching. My favorite driver growing up was Jeff Gordon. Like I love Jeff Gordon
Okay.
from his sprint car days. Watching him on Thursday and Saturday Night Thunder on ESPN. I love Jeff Gordon. So when he went into NASCAR, I was like, man, like that's cool.
Okay.
Uh, but really, my last few years of karting, especially getting associated with Paul, it was like, okay, ChampCar, getting to go to the ChampCar races and spend them around Paul and see what it was all about. I was like, God, I love this. This is where I'm headed, and I want to do this. And as I said, like I loved it. Like it was just the fact that where the series was, I had to make a decision in my life to which way I was going to go after that. But like leading up through it, I loved what Champ Car was, and at that point, and to this day, still love watching Indy cars, and got a lot of friends over there.
So the first, I guess, IndyCar race you went to, was it the Indy 500?
The first Indy car race that I ever went to,
Yeah.
no, it would have been because at that time they car wasn't at the Indy 500. So the first Indy car race live that I think I went to was Laguna Seca, the Arnie's Pass.
Really?
I had just started driving for Paul at that point, and that's where I was from. I mean, Monterey,
Yeah.
Laguna Seca was only 45 minutes from our house, and Paul invited us out there, my parents and myself, to because I think at that point I maybe had just signed with Paul, so I hadn't met him that much. So he invited us out there and come hang out and check it all out. Yeah, so I was there for that, I believe. I know that was
Wow.
my first race. Yeah.
That's an incredible race to be your
Actually, you know what,
first.
Daniel? I'll take that back. That was my first race, but I think that was happening. I think I happened to actually go there with some friends to watch that race, and then like a year or two after was when I got to meet Paul out there. The
Okay.
Zanardi Pass was 97, right? 96? 96.
Right
Yeah, I
in
think it was
there.
96. So, yeah, the story's true. I did go out there and watch that race, but a few years later, I was invited out there by Paul, and that's it.
That's a Nardi pass. That, in my opinion, that's probably like the iconic kart moment as far as I can remember. Like
Yeah.
that pass that like that's. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I mean, it stands out to me because the unfortunate thing, I was sitting on the other side, I was sitting on the front straightaway. So you really had no idea what happened. You're just like, holy crap, Alex is leading now. And
Yeah.
it's like, you go home and watch the highlights. You're like, holy hell, like that was an amazing pass.
That's the downside of road courses. It's
Yeah.
like you miss it. So you're in kart and you eventually wind up in like the Atlantic series, right?
Yeah. So it went through the Skip Barber series. It was the national series. Then I went to the next year was the Barber Dodge Pro Series. I won that championship, and then I got a deal with Carl Russo at Sport for the Toyota Atlantic Series in 2003.
So and then eventually you wind up in ChampCar. So how did the jump to
Yeah.
ChampCar happen?
So it was just right timing, same thing. So when I signed with Sport and Carl Russo and Toyota Atlantics in 03, the plan was to run that for a couple years and then move up to ChampCar. Well, our first year together, I won 7 out of 12 and won the championship, and kind of in a way, like kind of forced us like, okay, we need to move up next year. And that's what happened. The next year in 04, we moved up to ChampCar and kind of stepped the plans up by a year or two, really.
What was it like for you to get in a IndyCar, ChampCar, whatever you want to call it, for the first time?
I remember doing a test, and this was actually pre getting ready for, so in 02, going into 03, Ford Cosworth took over the whole series for Motor Supplier. So they were doing duration testing at Firebird Speedway in Arizona there.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, so they in 02, at the end of 02, they invited some Atlantic drivers, and then at that point I'd won the Barber Dodge Championship, so they invited me out there to go test and run laps. And I remember hitting the throttle the first time, and it felt like I was going 1,000 miles per hour. Like I remember I couldn't shift the car fast enough. Like I was grabbing, I felt like there was like 9 gears in the car because I was just grabbing gears. Like, holy hell, this thing is so fast. I remember getting done after the test, and it was like, how the hell am I supposed to race this thing? Like, I'm out there by myself. I mean, everything felt like it was happening so freaking fast. It was unbelievable. And I just walked away. It was like they race these together? Like, how do they do this? Like, they're out there side by side. So, but it was kind of cool because I'd already done a couple Atlantic tests, and I got back in the Atlantic car, and I thought the Atlantic car was fast. It slowed that thing down so much for me, and I felt like I was way better in it because of that test. But yeah, that first time I ever drove it, I thought, like, this is absolutely insane.
Yeah, well, you just said that. That sounds like what a lot of people, or what I've heard some drivers say about what it's like to be like in an Xfinity car, go experience a Cup car, and then come back to the Xfinity car. It's like a completely different sensation.
Yeah, I mean it's and even when I ran the road courses this year in Cup, like I'd been not being in a Cup car in 3 years or whatever, like just running that car the first time at Daytona when we dropped the green, just like how much the wheel spin was compared to an Xfinity car. I was
really,
it was like, okay, yeah, I forgot about this. Like, all right, like, so yeah, and even every practice, like the races that we had to do practices this year. I mean, it was like you jump in the Cup car and wheels spin the hell out of the thing. You're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I forgot how fast this thing is.
So those first 2 years in ChampCar, what is that experience like? You didn't get any wins, But how did you feel about what you were capable of as a driver?
So my rookie year, I felt really good. We won Rookie of the Year, and I was competing against my really good friend Justin Wilson. And at that point, Justin, he was on probably a smaller team, an experienced team, but when it came to the budget, we were definitely spending more money. And we had a great battle for Rookie of the Year. I had a couple of races, a couple of podiums. Laguna Seca was a race that I really thought I could win. I saw it on pit road. And then in a rookie mistake after that, like panic trying to get back to the lead and crash doing it. So I thought the rookie year went really well. The next year they brought Justin over to our team as my teammate, and I won't lie, I was intimidated as hell by him.
Really?
Because
was it because he was so tall, or
yeah, that was it. Yeah, and he wore these really short shorts like when he worked out. And no, it was because although we were in the same rookie class and second year now as ChampCar drivers, like he was probably 6 years older than me, right around there, maybe 4 or 5 years older. Anyway, but his racing experience, I felt like was like 15 years older than me because he'd been in Formula One, run Le Mans, like he'd done so much, and he was so fast. And like there was times I just thought, how in the hell am I going to beat this guy as my teammate? But he was the greatest teammate I could ever have in my life. Like, because he could have easily at times buried me mentally because I was just stressed. Like, how am I going to beat him? Like, what am I going to do every day to get better, to beat this guy? And it was never like him just going, in a way, like, because we hung out, we lived next to each other. So it like we hung out every day.
Okay.
And when I'd have a bad weekend, there was never a mention of like kind of sticking it to me a little bit. And I told him this years later. I said, you were a better man than I was, because I don't think I would have done the same thing because I'm so competitive. I think I would have kind of stuck it to him to try to bury him. And he just, if I wanted to talk about something, he'd talk about it. If I didn't, we'd go goof off and play video games, and we'd never mention the weekend. So my second year, I had a couple of chances to win. I threw it away. He did get the first win for the team, and then we finished 1-2 at Mexico City at the end of the year. But I was pretty upset with the year because I had made a lot of mistakes, and I was pushing so hard to try to beat him. But because of that, he always made me better. And that's, I think, part of the reason why we could go win Rolex together in 2012. The reason why I've gotten, just in general mentality of always trying to be better was like he made me better every time we were driving a race car and away from it. And I always loved him so much for that, because I might not have done the same for him because I didn't have that mentality. But he always told me, he said, I couldn't do, like, he didn't want to do that to me because he knew that if he did, it hurt his speed too. Because if I just stopped pushing because I was defeated, it wouldn't make him any better. And so that second year was rough, but what came from it, from me, like learning from him, was more than I could have ever imagined. Okay. If that makes sense. That was
I get it. I get that. So like, when I look at like what you did in the 2006 season, it just seems like a very weird year.
Yeah.
Like you switch teams, like I think after 3 or 4 races, to go to Forsyth, and then you instantly win. And then, a little while later in the year, while you're still winning, you're dipping your toe in the NASCAR waters. Like what's going on in 2006? For AJ Allmendinger, from like, well, what was that year like for you?
It was crazy because, like I said, 2005 wasn't a great year. So I kind of came in with a mentality in 2006, like, okay, this is make or break, and got wrecked at Long Beach to start the year. First turn, wrecked. So like that race is done. And then we went to Monterrey, Mexico, and had a shot to win and tried to go for the lead. And spun out. So like the year was terrible to start with, and went to Milwaukee and had a really bad pit stop. And at that point, like, it just wasn't going well. And the engineer I was working with was really young, and I was kind of frustrated and all that. And basically, I'm brutally honest. Sometimes, I'm always brutally honest about myself, and I can be brutally honest sometimes to other people. And we sat down at dinner one night, and he said, "Can we win together?" I said, "Nope." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, we probably could get a win, like, here and there, but I'm like, consistently, I'm like, I don't know if you need like a Justin, because you're so young as an engineer and all that, like, that can lead the ship." I'm like, and I need what Justin had, which was he had a championship winning engineer from the previous couple of years working on his car. And I said, it's like, we need to switch roles. And I just said, I'm being honest. Like, this isn't working. And I got fired the next day. Wow. So I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. And then Jerry Forsyth called me. I think that happened like on a Monday. He called me on a Tuesday and said, "Hey, we're interested in you, but we can't do anything this weekend. It's just not going to happen," because Portland was that weekend. I'm like, okay, Jerry, I appreciate the call. Then Wednesday he called in the morning and said, "Man, we really want to get something done, but it's too late this weekend. But, like, let's talk about maybe the next couple of races." I'm like, all right, Jerry, well, I appreciate it. Then Wednesday night he said, "You know what? Screw this. Let's do this deal. I need you in Portland Thursday morning to get fitted in the car." And literally, I flew to Portland and met the team for the first time, got fitted in the car that afternoon. We went out for practice on Friday. We were P1. I thought, yeah, this is working out pretty well. And it kind of all went from there. So as that year's going on, as I said, ChampCar, the rumbling are starting to happen. Red Bull, which had stuck with me from Roossport over to Forsyth, I commented them. I said, "Hey, I see you're starting a NASCAR team. Like, is there any interest?" Because I just didn't know what was going to happen. And that was what was hard. I took a lot of flack for a couple of years by the open wheel side of it. Like, he ran for the money like everybody is. And I was like, I didn't. Like, it looks like it, but, like, I wanted some sort of consistency, because I knew I wasn't going to come out and openly say it, but I'm like, I know that team's not going when this merges. And I don't know what my opportunities are. So I got to be smart about it. And that's kind of how it all happened. And, for a couple of years in NASCAR, it was hell because I wasn't making a lot of races. And the open wheel side of it seemed like there was a lot of news stories. Like, every time I didn't make a race, I was like one of the leading stories to it. And it was rough couple of years for sure.
So what like, I guess first off, your first NASCAR start is in a truck in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So what how does that happen? Like, what is that race day like for you?
The race day was, so practice was really good. I was like, I think like 6th or 7th in practice. And I thought, okay, well, I've never done ChampCar at the time. You didn't wake up at 8 in the morning and strap into it and your first lap on the racetrack qualifying. Like, that's just not how it worked. So I like, oh, by the way, yeah, qualifying's 8 in the morning. Like, okay, never done a cold new tire run like that. And I spun out on lap 2 and fenced it. So we had to go to the backup truck, and I was like, what is this is a team they put together for me. It wasn't like Kyle Busch and the 51 truck that I just happened to jump in for the week. Like, this was a whole new team they put together for me to run at Bill Davis. I said, well, okay, what's the backup situation? They're like, well, it's Bill Lester's show truck that's been sitting in the shop forever. We needed a backup. And I was like, oh God. So they put that together. I think I finished like 12th or 13th. Thought, okay, that's not bad. Like, for my first start. Then we went to Talladega. I was leading with 2 to go. Mark Martin schooled me on what the draft and how to lay back on a restart and what all that does. So I finished 5th. And then we went to Atlanta. I qualified 2nd. I was leading the race, and my teammate Johnny Benson showed me what right side air was all about in a truck. And he got to the outside of me, and I spun out in front of the field leading the race and crashed. And I thought, okay, like, man, once I figure this out, I might be able to win some of these. And then Red Bull was like, yeah, we're going cup racing next year. And I was like, what? Like, shouldn't we do, like, maybe part of me was like, it'd be great to run one more year in ChampCar because I knew it was going to be the final year of ChampCar, and mix in some of the truck bush races, and that wasn't the plan. So they threw me out there, brand new team, brand new car, go figure it out.
Well, yeah, I've heard, some stories about like how Red Bull, they just like thought they could just throw money and they'd just be able to win instantly. That was not the case.
Yeah.
So like so describe to me that organization. What were you stepping into in 07?
Well, so winter was rough because there was no cars built. It wasn't the hey, I'm going to go buy this shop with everything already in it. Like, they started from scratch and like they bought the shop, but the car, like, it was Toyota. It was a brand new manufacturer.
Yeah.
So there was no cars. Like, I went and wrecked at Kentucky. We're testing, and it was more. And at that point, if you remember, it was both cars, the COT, the first year of the COT, and the old car. So they're building two different cars. So we had one of the old, the old gen chassis Cup car. I wrecked at Kentucky. This was like early January or late December maybe, and they're like, all right, well, we can't test the rest of the year with that car because that thing's till we build, we're not going to have anything really built till Daytona. Those cars, I was like, cool, great, that's awesome. So I have no laps. I went to Daytona, tried to qualify for the 500 with, I think, 8 laps, in a Cup car.
Boy.
So and that's when they had, I think, 64 cars show up that year for Daytona.
Wow. So when I was looking on Racing Reference, in this period, and I looked at all the D and Qs you had. I was like, oh boy, how much of a toll did that take on you? Just showing up to the track and not making it, and not making it, and not making it.
Oh, it was rough. Like, it was some low points. The only thing that kind of helped was, if you look at Vickers, he had almost as many D and Qs as I had. And that was what was the only thing, like, partially helping me. Not that it helped me any experience at all, but Brian, the year before at Hendrick, I think had the best qualifying average in the series. And he went from that to, I think he made like 20 out of 36 races or 19 out of 36 races. I made 17 out of 36 races. Now, I will say, when he got in the races, he was actually pretty good. But, like, it was, believe me, it was miserable. Like, I kind of thought, what have I done here? Like, and yeah, it was difficult to say the least.
So then you finally get in at Bristol. So were you expecting it to happen at Bristol?
At that point, I didn't know what to. So Daytona, I get wrecked. We go to Fontana. It's sad. I don't know if it's good or bad. I still remember these like it was yesterday. We go to Fontana, and because there's so many cars there, we couldn't get through tech until like 30 minutes to go in the session. So I made 2 laps on the racetrack, and I missed qualifying by like 1/10 of a second. I'm like, all right. So then we went to Vegas, and I thought, a really good lap. I was early in qualifying, and I was like 4th out of 13 cars. And I thought, thank God we're finally going to make a race. Well, there's a lot of go or go homers at the end of that qualifying session. There's so many wrecks that qualifying took forever. So like the last 10 cars were so fast. And then Atlanta, I blew up leaving pit road. So that was the first 4 races. That's how it started. And went to Bristol, and I had tested Bristol in the winter, and I thought, okay, I'm all right. And I remember after practice, Brian was on the left side of the page, like in 24th, and I was on the right side of the page in like 38th. And I was like, God, how does he got so much speed on me? And I looked at the time, it was 1/100th of a second. That's how many cars were in the grouping. Like, there was like 15 spots between us. But anyway, so I didn't know what to expect at that point. So to finally make a race, I've never been so happy in my life to qualify last for a race.
Okay, I didn't look at where you started. So you were last.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess, like, kind of like to condense to like the next few years, like, at what point did you feel like you were actually part of the NASCAR world. You were a NASCAR driver. When did you finally like feel like that?
I felt that probably like 2010 finally. Like, '09, as I said, I gave most of my money back just to try to survive. I did run the whole year, which was great. But I always felt like I was like on the, you know, God, if I didn't make enough money that race or whatever, like I never didn't know if I was going to the next one. So 2010, I got in the 43 for Richard Petty. Had some really good sponsors there, and we had a decent season. I think I finished like maybe 20th in points, which wasn't terrible at that point. But yeah, that's when I finally felt like I was for like '09. I've never. It was hard to say like I was learning anything because everything was. I was just like hanging onto the wall, just gripping, trying to stay in the sport. So I
Yeah.
wasn't worried about learning something. I was worried about going out there and showing speed every weekend, whether it was practice or the race or like whatever. I'm like, just give them a glimpse this weekend that I can do this, whatever that may be. One lap. I don't care if it's one lap. Like, so 2010 was like the first time I felt like I was like learning and being part of NASCAR.
Okay. So at some point you had to get a call from Team Penske to get in that car. What were the circumstances of that happening?
Well, it was obviously Kurt got let go,
Mm.
and I was really happy at the end of 2011. We had a shot to. I think I missed the playoffs, and this was when it was 12 drivers. I think I missed the playoffs by like 7 points to make the chase that year, and we had 2 races. One at Dover where I was leading, and I blew up. And we had another race where I was up front and something happened anyway, and we didn't have a good. So it was like I was really happy at the end of the year. I was working with Greg Irwin. We made a crew chief change middle of the year, and Greg came over, and we had a lot of speed at a lot of different racetracks, and I was really happy with the way the season ended. We finished 15th in points, and I'm like, okay, like we got something to build on here. Well, the problem was Best Buy was leaving, and there was rumblings that the team may look different next year. I didn't, not, I don't know how to say it the right way, but like the rumors of Richard Petty Motorsports, right? Like there's always financially, it's been a struggle for a while, right?
Yeah.
So like at that point, it was one of those things where there were some questions starting to happen because of sponsors possibly leaving or a sponsor or something, and reached out to Roger and kind of did the deal.
It just happened.
Well, I mean, it happened pretty quick. We met with
Wow.
him, and we went with it, and it was a dream come true, but it also was like the biggest nerves of my life. And then the
Yeah.
year didn't start off well, and then obviously the rest of it kind of went downhill from there.
Like, what did it mean for you, like, to be driving for Roger Penske at that point in your career? Like,
It was the biggest thing ever in my life.
yeah.
Like it really was. Roger was the guy I always wanted to drive for. I didn't know it was going to be with fenders on it. Like Roger was the guy I always wanted to drive for. So I just didn't expect it when I had this dream of driving for Roger Penske that it was going to be in a stock car. But like that meant the world to me. And like I was in awe of driving for Roger and just awe of always being around him. And because of that, I put so much sickening pressure on myself to perform for him, because like that's all I wanted to do was to make Roger proud. Like that was like my biggest goal in my life at that point, was to make him proud and be a part of the rich history of his team.
And so for you, what was your favorite memory of driving for that team?
I don't. There was a cool moment where at the All-Star race, I had to race my way in, and Roger, that's always Indy qualifying. It had been always Indy qualifying that weekend, and we qualified pole for the showdown. And I mean, there were some badass guys. Junior was in that, Clint, Jamie McMurray was in that race. Maybe Martin Truex at that point. I don't know. But that showdown that year was like stacked. So I qualified pole for it, and coming to on the pace lap, I was starting to wobble the car around, and I got on the radio and said, "Is my tire flat?" And they said, "Yep." And I went down pit road as they went to green. So I
Oh,
was at the back of the field, and I raced my way. This is before before they did the stage break winners. Like, I raced my way back up and finished second to make it into the all-star race.
wow.
And I drove down pit road like all jacked after that, all pumped up coming down pit road. And Roger was standing in the middle of pit road, like pumping his fists, and like he had flown from Indy qualifying and got there in time to see it happen.
Wow.
And I didn't know he was even there. So I thought that was pretty cool, because I really felt that was like I was making him proud there.
That's awesome. I'm like, I can't. I find it hard to believe that, like, at that time, Dale Jr. would have been in the Open since he was a previous winner. So maybe that rule wasn't in place yet. Okay. So
Yeah,
wow.
he actually, I think if you look it up, I think he won the Open that year.
Wow. Okay. I will look that up. So so the way things ended with Team Penske happens. With you get suspended, you go through the recovery program and all that. So there's a 3-month period where you're not racing in NASCAR. What's that 3-month period like for you?
I mean, to be brutally honest, there's a lot of dark days, a lot of just hell, like, okay, what's the what is the reason to even be here? Well,
Mhm.
what am I doing? You know, you see who your true friends are. You see who are maybe not true friends. But I've always had great family and friends around me. I've always, as outgoing as I can be sometimes when it comes to talking or the way I am. Like, I'm very to myself, except for the group of people that I let in. That's probably why I'm not as big on social media sometimes, stuff like that, because it's just, yes, I'm outgoing to when I'm with the right people, but I'm very, very to myself and quiet sometimes. Other when I'm not around those people. So, yeah, just a lot of sadness and just times of just darkness, really. But at that point, it was all right. Figure it out. Maybe this is happening for a reason. I don't know what the reason is right now. This reason sucks really bad, but the biggest thing out of all of it, like, I was just sad that I let Roger down. That was the biggest thing. Like, it had nothing to do with myself, because during that year I was putting so much pressure on myself, and the year, like, it was just not going well because we had so many mechanical failures. Like, weird stuff happened that, like, I was just really, like, I was stressed, like, a lot of the times in tears and stuff like that. So yeah, it was tough for sure.
So, but you do end up getting back on the track that year with James Finch, right?
Yeah, and it was I'd met with James a few weeks prior, and we talked about it, and I think that's when Junior, is that right, when he had his concussion maybe, or something, like, at that point, and it happened to work out. Yeah, where I think Regan was supposed to drive the 51, and
Okay,
Junior,
yeah.
Junior got the or whatever, and Regan went over to that car, and I drove James's car, and it was awesome that James gave me those opportunities to kind of get back in the sport.
So, like, after, well, you said, a dark period. What was getting back in the cockpit? Like, what was that feeling like for you?
It was refreshing, because at that point I kind of was just doing it for the love of it again. I didn't know if anything was going to come of it, and I just kind of, like, just out there enjoying it again, because I in a way didn't have any pressure, right? Like, I was like, okay, whatever happens here, like, I'm not sure what's going to happen, and James was an easy guy to drive for. He was fun, and yeah, I mean, it was just kind of joy again.
Okay, so fast forward to JTG. How did you get hooked up with them?
Yeah, Tad. I never met Tad, and he reached out during the so 2013, when I was doing some of the races for James Finch, he kind of reached out to me like about middle of the year and said, what are your plans? What do you want to do? Because they were kind of in a last ditch effort too. They were struggling and they didn't have a lot of funding that was happening. And reached out to me and we kind of said, all right, like, let's see what we can do here, and did some races, just kind of trial races to see how it went in 2013. And we seemed like we enjoyed each other.
How was that team, that organization, different from all the other ones you'd raced for up to that point?
It was Tad and Jody and Brad. I mean, really Tad and Jody. Brad, as a partner, but it was just him and his wife. Like, that's all they did, and it was kind of their living. And Tad was a guy that was really great at going to find sponsors and things like that, and was pretty easy going. And Jody just, that's all they knew, because they'd done it for so long, but that's all they had. So it was like they were kind of in a way like me. It was like, all right, we're all just trying to survive here. Like, we're trying to get better, but like, this is what we do, and we don't have a backup plan. And so I think, we worked hard together to try to build it. And Tad, because everywhere else, okay, take out Red Bull, the team itself, but Red Bull as a name is established, right? We know what Red Bull is. Yeah. And then Richard Petty had been around for so long, and obviously Team Penske. Well, Tad and Jody, it was like they let me be a different part of it, in the sense like I had a lot of influence as well. Like, we talked a lot of like, okay, how do we get better? That part of a team, because everything else had always been so big and established.
Yeah. So how important was that for you as a driver to have that kind of influence?
I mean, it meant a lot, because like as I said, I felt like, we were on the same page. We're like, all right, this is our last ditch effort, both of us here. Like, so if it doesn't work for either one of us, we're not sure what's going to happen. And so it was kind of like, I didn't have to worry about paying the bills and things like that, but like, I was like, we were all in it together. We were riding along, and that was, we were trying to make it happen for ourselves and to really just survive.
And then in 14, you get your win at Watkins Glen, and I asked you about that at Indianapolis a couple months ago. So you called it a relief. Had you experienced that kind of relief up to that point before in your career?
Yeah, it was like 06 all over again, winning the first ChampCar race. It really was. It was like, it just reminded me like, okay, like we finally did it. Like, okay, like it's joy, you're excited, but I don't want to have to answer that. I don't have to answer that question anymore. So it was almost the same exact feeling. 06 was a little different because, when you get fired, you like to kind of like throw it back at that team. And that was my way of throwing it back. Like, I told you, right situation, we're going to go on a run here. 14, Tad, like, I wasn't throwing it back to anybody. Like, a lot of that was my own doing as well. So that was more just relief and joy of finally getting a win.
So, like, for most of your Cup career, specifically at JTG, you it was always, AJ, he's the threat at the road courses and all that. He's the road course guy. Was that label put on you from the start in NASCAR? Oh, he's the road course guy, or was that something that just kind of like slowly came up?
No, I think that slowly came up because actually at the start, Red Bull, our cars weren't like, hell, we didn't make road course races. Like in 07, we missed Sonoma. Then we got rained out at Watkins Glen, so we never even got a chance. And then 08, can't even remember it. 08, we weren't very good. We made the race at Sonoma, but then I went to like as the years went on, like I didn't have a lot of great road course races early on. Like in 09, when I was at Petty, I think I finished 7th at Sonoma or something like that, and was okay at Watkins Glen. But it was really, as I think what changed in my mind was 2013 when I won with Team Penske in the Xfinity cars.
Yeah.
Like, it was the first time I'm like, okay, this is like the way you need to drive these cars now on a road course. Everything else, I was just kind of like trying to figure it out. And Petty, I had some good runs. I think I finished fourth at Watkins Glen. But yeah, like never really understood how to drive them. I was just driving them, and like, you know what I mean. If that makes sense, it was like I'm like I don't know if this is the right way. This is the way I'm going to do it. Like so, Xfinity cars at with Team Penske, I kind of got to go test it. Had a general idea. I was like, all right, and it's like everything just clicked in my mind. Like, okay, this is how you're supposed to drive these cars. I won both those races. We went to JTG 2013 at Watkins Glen, qualified fourth, had a shot to win, ran out of fuel, still finished in the top 10. And from there on out, it was like, okay, now I'm a threat at these races. But, I always joked around. Like, people were like, well, do you hate just that road course ringer? I said, well, it's better than everybody just going, well, you suck at everywhere. Like, at least I had a specialty.
So you looked on the bright side of it when that got applied to you.
Yeah, and honestly, in the back of my mind, I knew in the right situation, at the right racetracks, I can go win anywhere, or at least be competitive. We almost won Martinsville a couple of times at JTG.
Yeah.
When our cars were right on the mile and a half. So, I qualified third at Charlotte, ran up front. But it's just, I always felt like on the ovals, like the car needs to be better. You still have to have a great car anywhere, but the car needed to be better there. And just sometimes, like, you just don't get those situations. At Petty, I should have won Dover at least twice, and it just didn't happen. So I always looked at it like I can win anywhere. It just hasn't happened, unfortunately. It's Cup. It's tough to do. And I hadn't run hardly any Xfinity races or truck races to have those shots to win on ovals. So
okay.
I kind of had it there, but, you guys are the media. It's people are going to say things, and it can either really piss you off, or you just let it go one ear off the other. So you just kind of make a joke of it sometimes. That's what I like to do, at least.
But yeah, at the road courses, it was obvious that you did put more pressure on yourself to get that job done. Was that how unhealthy was that for you to put so much more pressure on you when you would go to Watkins Glen and go to Sonoma?
Honestly, man, my whole life of how I live my career is probably unhealthy sometimes.
Okay.
If we're being truthful, like I put my pressure on myself everywhere I go. It's certain ways of course, you go to certain racetracks, especially when like a JTG situation. Like, sure, there's tracks that you have better opportunities than others, and so but like. I'm no different today. I put so much pressure on myself to be at my best. So it's true. I'm 39. I'm almost 40 years old.
Yeah.
I'm still doing this as a career. I still feel like I'm getting better. Maybe it's not the best way to do it sometimes for the health side of it, but I am who I am, and I'm not going to cheat now. It's worked. Like, I'm still here.
Yeah. Okay. So by the time you and JTG parted ways, how had that organization changed in the years that you'd been there from start to finish? How was it different than the way you found it?
Well, it went to two cars, and I didn't think that, and I was clear when it was happening. I didn't think it was the right time to happen, because sure, we'd won in 2014, then we took a step back in 2015. We were struggling again. Our partnership with RCR, we had to strengthen it. And in 2016, I felt like we started getting our cars up to date all the time. And we started running better there. And we were kind of right in the ballpark to make the playoffs on points. We had really a bad stretch in the summer. But I thought, okay, we're really starting to run good here. Like, for the most part, on a consistent basis, where we are a top 15 team. And I thought, this is pretty good. And they said, well, we need to go to two cars, because it was a good thing. They had a lot of sponsorship. And I was just like, we need another year of what we're doing before we do this. And they went to two cars. And then I think that's where the struggle became again.
Yeah.
And then at that point, and I get it, like Tad is putting he travels all the time for his trying to find sponsorship, and he's doing so much. And you expect sometimes, results for what the effort you're putting in, but the cars weren't there. And but opinions started to change on where you feel like you should be running, and that's what was hard about it. Like when you're getting told, well, you should be running top 12 to 15 every race, and you're like, well, the other car's right next to me. Like me and Chris basically ran together every weekend. It was just I had some of the road courses, and I was really good at Martinsville, so I had tracks I could stand out more in than Chris. But me and Chris basically flip flopped every weekend on who had. It was like, okay, who's going to be, 22nd and who's going to be 23rd, and that was just the way it was. I just had a couple of racetracks that I could at least shine better at.
Yeah.
But that was the problem, was you had the pressure there of like, okay, if you don't shine there, then it's just not good. So I think that's what was tough about it, and it kind of got strained, and we both needed to change.
So like, what was that conversation like? Like the parting of ways conversation?
It was a little weird, honestly. It was kind of like, well, this is what we're doing, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I get it, like totally understand, and we had 5 years together. But there was like literally, it was like walked off the plane and that after Homestead, and was like, all right. They said,
wow,
see you. And I was like, well, okay, and that was it.
No going away party or anything. It's just like, fine.
No,
just
I mean, wow. Tad and Jody gave me because I still had 1 year left on my contract, and I was like, I'm not gonna fight that. Like, that's not me. Like, I could probably look into it. We could go through a battle of this. So I'm like, it's not worth it to me doing that crap. And they gave me they gave me a good bonus, more than I would have normally gotten bonus wise at the end of the year. But that was it. Never really spoke. That was all that was ever said.
Wow. Okay. So at that point, what are you thinking about your future? Like, are you thinking maybe that's the end of it, the end of the road, or did you start putting feelers out? Like, what was it that period for you?
At that point, I was so burnt out. Like, that last year and a half, 2 years was rough. Like, and I wasn't a happy person. I felt bad for my girlfriend, now wife, Tara, because I just wasn't a happy person every day at home. Like, it wasn't. I mean, she had to unfortunately just kind of go along with it, and so I was smart enough to know, like, okay, you need a break. Like, there's no reason to jump right back in it and go find something else. And because God forbid, A, it's not fair to whoever you do it with if your heart's not fully into it. And B, like, the last thing I want to do is jump back into it with somebody else, and within the first 2 races go, oh God, I don't want to be here. Like, this is awful. So I didn't know, and NBC reached out to me to do broadcasting. I thought, oh, that's cool. Why not? Let's try it. I'd worked on Race Hub for Fox Sports for a couple of years doing analyst stuff, and thought, okay. And I didn't really know if I was going to drive much anymore.
Is that, as someone whose racing's been your entire life, is that how weird is that to like reach that point in your life to say, hey, that it might be over?
Yeah, it was rough. Like the Daytona 500 was tough.
Yeah.
Like when that whole week it was tough because I was starting stuff for NBC at that point, and like I'm like, damn it, I have to watch this race to talk about it, but I don't want to watch this. So yeah, it was good because it was strange. It was like I was happy to be home and not having to travel every Thursday to Sunday, but then kind of like it. I was definitely happier than I had been, but there was definitely like ups and downs, like happy about it and then sad about it, happy about it and sad about it. So yeah, it was. But you know what? Like, I'm sure everybody has to deal with that, right, in their life for the most part. The one especially any sports person where it's coming to an end or it does come to an end, like we don't have to fight it. So I just kind of thought at that point, like, it was my turn to fight that.
Okay. So at some point you get a call from Chris Rice. So, I'm curious, like, was there a time limit on, like, okay, if you don't receive that call from Chris Rice until maybe, couple months later, you might have said no. Like or did he call you maybe at just the right time for you to say yes?
No, there was no time limit really.
Okay, okay,
I mean, at least I didn't have it in my mind at that time. They called me
okay,
at the beginning of 2019 and said,
okay,
would you like to run some races for college racing?
okay.
I had watched the team over the first few years and saw that was growing, but that was about the gist of what I knew about it. And as I said, had never met Chris and had never met Matt, and said, hey, would you like to do this? And said sure, and cleared it
Okay.
with NBC that I could do it first of all, and NBC was gracious enough for me to allow me to go do these races. And yeah, but like I didn't really. I was just like, I'm gonna run some races. I don't know. Like it'd be cool to win, but hell, I don't know. That's about it.
Were you literally just viewing it as a side job at that
Yeah,
point?
yeah.
Okay.
I was like, man, maybe I can make this work where I can a little bit of both, and like life will be good. And um, but I did. I mean, that was like the expectation that I had. I had no idea what else was going to go on, or if I was going to enjoy it, what the team was going to be like, and things like that. So it definitely, yeah, I kind of was just taking it as it came.
Mm,
Like I had no expectations.
okay. How did doing your analysis work for NBC Sports at the same time you're driving like that? How did that benefit you? How did that benefit you as a driver in any way?
I think it was just it didn't really. I wouldn't say it benefited me driving the race car itself, but it gave me different perspective of outside the car,
Okay.
and maybe even a little bit inner working of the team, of talking to other people and things like that I had never really taken the time to think about maybe, and learn from, and things like that. So it didn't help me in the race car. I mean, it honestly probably gave me the best attitude ever that I've ever had in a race car, and that was quite honestly, well, I don't give a fuck anymore. Like, honestly, I don't really care if this leads to next week or not. Like, and that it freed me up. Like, it was like, I don't care. Like,
Because
okay.
you had something waiting. Like there.
But that, and I just was like, yeah, I just that, and hell, I felt like I'd either, whether it was putting myself or all that, like I'd been through the ringer. I mean, my NASCAR life, some of it self-induced, some of it situation, some of it clawing and scratching, and every week was like, God, please let me be here next week.
Mm,
I was over that, and it was like, okay, if I do this race and we get done, they're like, okay, well, we don't really need you anymore. I'm like, all right, well, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Like, and I'll go, I'll do my job for NBC. And so a little bit of all of it, honestly.
so okay, so you go from not giving a fuck to at some point you come back around to giving a fuck. So
Well, yes. So when okay, like my the performing at my best always. And like I didn't like our second race, Chris is like, dude, you got to relax. And I'm like, Chris, I'll meet you halfway. I'll try to have some fun with it. But if you want me to drive this car, like I am intense. And if you
okay,
ask Chris Rice and Matt Collog, me on the golf course, general, Chris is like, dude, my wife is like, you're so intense, like all the time. I'm like, yeah, that's my personality. So when it comes to performing, whenever I'm in a race car, I don't
okay,
care if it's a go-kart,
okay,
like hell yeah. Like it's nauseous intensity, like drive, but it's more I don't care what happens after this. Like
okay,
if I just wake up tomorrow and go, I'm done, then I'm done. Like, because in my mind I was done already. Like, so that's how I am now. Like, I care. Like, I want to go win the championship. But
yeah,
like tomorrow, if they just go, and I've told Chris this, like, and it's probably why I'm at the best I've ever been, because it's like I don't. You wake up tomorrow and we're like, well, we're done. I'm like, all right, well, whatever. See you. Peace out. I'm good then. And yeah, and that's the way I like. That's it. It frees me up, and they love it. And it's like when I'm competing against guys, on the racetrack, I'm like, kind of in a way, I'm like, don't really, I don't care if you mess with me because I don't give a crap, and I'm going to come back at you even harder.
So I mean, I consider you to be like a Swiss Army knife when it comes to being, you know, a race car driver. So like if you were filling out a cover letter for a job at a race team, how would you describe yourself as a driver?
You know, that's actually a really good question, man. You know, I think definitely multi-talented in different forms of race cars. I think somebody that's fairly aggressive, but you know, and maybe it's not so much me driving the race car, but what I would ever want anybody that I work with to know or ever to say about me, and I hope they would, is the fact that they know how much I care about the race team, and that every time I'm on the racetrack, whether I'm screaming and yelling and pissed off or happy or sad, like they know I have given everything possible in that race car that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the biggest thing for me, is like have given 100% and cared every lap on the racetrack.
So how is this year alone? How is your self evaluation of as a driver? How has that changed this year alone?
I mean, I don't like to give myself a lot of credit. This is always the funniest thing I've ever heard, because maybe it's the persona sometimes on camera or whatever. People are like, I don't like AJ because he's just too cocky. And I laugh at that because I am literally the highest, most self-doubt person ever. Because I always say, you did it one day doesn't mean shit until you do it the next day. And that day doesn't mean shit unless you do it the next day. And that's the way I've always been. And I have more self-doubt about myself every day because I'm like, go prove it again. What you did yesterday means absolutely nothing. So this year, I feel I really do. I feel like I've done a good job of trying to get maximizing everything out of the car and not going over the limit of making mistakes to do that. You know, in Cup, I used to get myself in trouble where I might overdrive the car trying to make it a 12th place car, knowing it's a 20th place car, and then I'd hit the fence doing it. You know, this year we've had some execution issues like that. And it's all of us together that we could have had more wins and even more top fives. But with that said, I feel like I've done a good job. But I also know the areas I need to be better in. I need to, because I'm so intense about trying to win, because I feel like we have the opportunities every weekend to win. Like, you know, if we're starting to struggle during that run, I start getting frustrated. And instead of maybe being just going, this is where I need to be better, I don't tell the right. I'm more mad than just specifying, okay, we need to fix this area. So I need to be better about that. And I'm always going to be trying to work on that.
Like, you know, we've heard a lot over the last 2 years about you being mentors for the younger drivers at Colleague, Ross, Justin Haley. At this point in your career, who do you turn to for advice, mentorship?
Matt Colleague, Chris Rice.
Really? Okay.
Really, it's you know, on the driving side of it, I'll ask questions if I need to from whoever. You know, somebody that's always been great with me, especially over the last couple of years, is Kyle Busch. If I call Kyle or text him like going into a race, I try to be respectful. If he's racing against me, I'll never ask him a question because you know, like we're out there competing. But if it's here, for instance, Bristol last year, it was the first race after the pandemic. I'd never been here. We're dropping the green, no practice. Text Kyle, say, hey man, like I know you're part of a different organization. Like you can tell me you can't do that, or like you don't feel comfortable doing that. Like, but you know, I just need some advice around Bristol, and obviously Kyle Busch is probably the best one to ask. At a lot of places, Kyle Busch is the best one to ask. and no hesitation. 5 minutes later, I mean, a massive email breaking down everything he did.
Really?
And, you know, he did that for me at Darlington. And, I mean, so like, if there's questions, I'd probably go to Kyle Busch on it because I trust him, and he's asked me questions, and I respectfully, answer him fully, even if it's at a road course that we're probably racing against each other on. Like, it's so, but just advice and how to be better and what you need, Matt Colling and Chris Rice, because they're truly the ones that, it starts with them, and then it goes obviously down through all the men and women at color racing. But they're the ones that have chose me, and they're the ones that are leading me as I'm trying to lead everybody else with it. So they're the ones that I go to.
So as far as the Xfinity Series, since like Kyle's no longer racing in the series now going forward,
we'll see.
Well, I was going to ask, like, do you think you've like slid into that Kyle Busch role, kind of in the Xfinity Series, as being that older veteran Cup guy with all the experience that the young guys have to chase?
I don't know about that, because unless we win a championship, you're not the hunted, I think.
Okay.
Like, that's like, you got to go out there and win the championship. I like this year, I still feel like a rookie at half these places because I haven't been to it in an Xfinity car. So I don't think so. I don't know. You got to ask the other guy. I mean, I look at Allgaier as maybe that, because I was looking at his stats. He's got as many Xfinity starts as I do Cup starts. Like, he's been around for a long time, and he's been really good at multiple teams. So, but I don't really think about it that much.
Okay. All right. I guess my last question for you before I finally let you go is how do you, up to this point, how do you sum up your racing career? Like, how would you, like, up to this point?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's a good book, maybe. Some people, some people may read it. I don't know. Like, it's. I look at it this way, because I'm so intense, and I always want to be the best. Sure, there's a hell of a lot more I'd love to have done. But then I got to be realistic and say, I mean, how many guys in this world have won IndyCar races at the highest level, have won a Rolex 24-hour race at the highest level, have won Cup races, have won Xfinity races? Like, I've been very lucky in my career to be able to have done a lot of this. And whether I wish I could have done more, I'm just a kid from San Jose that my parents mortgaged their house 3 times to keep me going, that all I wanted to do, I didn't know what I wanted. I just wanted to race cars. And at 40 years old, I feel like I'm at the best I've ever been, at least on the NASCAR side of it. And I've done some pretty cool things. And hell, I've won at Indy as well now. Like, oh my God, like, how special is that? I have pictures of me kissing the bricks. So, like, it's not a bad life.
Where's the Indy trophy right now?
Well, I'm waiting for it because Matt Collick's got the first one, so the second one's coming.
Oh, okay. So they got to make another one. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a spot reserved for it?
Well, it's funny. It was my wife said this like a year and a half ago. She's like, "We need to get a new trophy case," and I was like, yeah. Like, I felt like that was bad superstition. Like, I mean, no, we don't need. I mean, like, we'll be fine. Well, it's kind of good. We need a new trophy case. I got a lot, like, over the last 2 years, we've got a decent amount of trophies now. So we got to get a new trophy case and get, hopefully put more trophies in it.
All right, man. Well, good luck getting one tonight. This is the one. Bristol has a sword, right?
Yeah.
So
I got a couple of business adventures with a longtime friend. He's like my big brother in Charlotte. So we own a bar, and it's called Boatyard Eats, and it's in Huntersville. So point of me saying this is I told him he always wants me to win a trophy, a cup. He wants to drink like the commercial in Vegas where they're running the so-called soccer players are carrying the cup and they're drinking out of it. Well, it's just a vase that they stole out of the hotel. Well, he wants me to win a cup. So I always joke around. I'm like, they don't give a lot of cups. So I said, but at Bristol, they got a sword so we could start drinking at the bar and then just start
bringing the sword to people and see what happens.
Oh God, I don't think that.
I was like, that's a great business idea. And he was like, I love it. So,
If you drink a certain amount of drinks, you get a picture taken with a sword.
Yeah, that's it. There you go.
What's the bar's name?
It's Boatyard Eats.
Boatyard Eats. EATS Eats.
Yeah.
Okay, Boatyard Eats. How long have you owned that?
So we've owned that since right as the pandemic started. We took it over. We've owned a comedy club together. We own On the Nines restaurant in Mooresville, which is at the golf course. We own that, and we've had a couple of other things together. So we've been doing things for about 10 years together.
What's the comedy club's name?
Well, so it was called Comedy Zone, but I'm not a part of that. Neither of us are a part of that anymore.
Okay.
But that's kind of where it started. And
Okay.
we've done a few different things together. So he's been in the restaurant business for his whole life. And I always joke around. People are like, oh, is restaurants and stuff great to invest in? I'm like, well, no, but if you got the right person, they are. And his name is Chris Pakitis. He's been like a big brother to me for a long time. And I mean, I always joke, I'm like, I don't invest in businesses, I invest in him. Like literally he could say we're doing outhouses tomorrow. I'll be like, cool, all right, let's do that. So like, where are you based out of?
Well, I'm currently living in Northwest Arkansas, so far away. So
Well, you're ever in Charlotte, let me know. We'll show you the bar.
okay, well, I'm glad I know about it. So yeah, I will definitely if I remember it.
Yeah.
If I'm in Charlotte, I will definitely do that. So AJ, thank you for talking to me for an hour and a half. So I hope this is a good way for you to kill time. So
it was like I now I don't know what's happened to NCIS, but it's all good.